Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from irasportsdaily.com. I am your host, Greg Flamong, and with me, as always, is Jamie Ueyama, Jamie University. It is Tuesday, March 21st. I didn't have to check, Jamie, because I know because spring practice starts tomorrow, March 22nd. We're all fired up for it, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about spring ball. We're going to talk about women's college basketball. We're going to be talking about hot takes and predictions on the eve of spring practice. Now, programming note, okay? Normally we record Tuesdays and Thursdays. This week it's going to be Tuesday and Wednesday, tomorrow at 11:30 Eastern time, 8:30 Pacific time. After Marcus Freeman speaks, after the first opening practice, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about his comments. Talk about there's probably going to be some roster stuff that no one kind of knows is coming down the pike. So we're going to talk about what's going on with the roster. We're going to talk about the team and all that fun stuff. And you're going to want to, this is the week, if you're ever going to subscribe to the podcast, to hit the like button, hit subscribe button, hit the notification bell, all those things for when something goes live or when we go live. If you're ever going to hit the subscribe to us on our pod feeds, right? Whether it's on Spotify or Apple, which is in the description below. If you want to check that out, you're going to want to do it this week because we are scheduled to have something special on Thursday, probably coming out Friday in the pod feeds Friday on YouTube on Friday. I don't even know if Jamie knows about this, and I'm not going to say it because it's just scheduled. It's on the docket, right? But it's a special thing that we're going to have come out, which I'm very excited about. And we'll see. We'll see what comes of it. Rajon is here. Howdy, boys. Spring ball, exclamation points all around. Joe Bro says, what's good, fellas? Joe Bro with his own hot take. Drake Bowen will take the field this year as a starter. All right, Jamie, that's a hot take, right? That's not necessarily
too hot for me.
That's too hot. It's flaming hot. Jamie's throwing it out. He doesn't want it, right? He doesn't want to have that. So but I appreciate the hot take. It's not really a spring hot take. I
appreciate it, yeah.
It's not really a super spring hot take. Ga Wang in the chat. Yeah. You may have noticed on the bottom, sponsored by ESQclothing.com, and this show is presented by ESQ Clothing. So thank you to Ga Wang. Hot take, Jamie and Greg are going to have some new swag soon. That is true. It's fact-check true. We are going to have a show where we are sporting sporting ESQ Clothing, and we're going to give it the full review, Jamie. We're going to give it the full review. So thank you to Goff for doing that. We really appreciate it. And so, yeah, check out ESQclothing.com for all your fine dressing needs. I mean, look at Goff in this in his little avatar here. Look at him. Look how sharp he looks. Is there any better endorsement than that, Jamie? Right
there isn't. He looks too
looks
good.
Class. He looks too good for it. I don't even know if I'm worthy of his. I'm worthy of his clothes. Matt says bamboo shirts for life. Okay. S. Gomez says, why am I here? Because I subscribed, liked, and clicked the alert bell to be reminded. And that's why S. Gomez is here. And that's why S. Gomez never misses a show, Jamie. That's true.
He's always in.
That's true. All right. Before we get to spring ball.
Wait, one more thing. Because I know
Jamie's got one more thing.
I just in addition, Thursday, obviously we're doing our reaction show on Wednesdays, like you said. So all that's going on the first day of spring ball. Thursday, I'll have my 6 thoughts on the Thursday. Thursday also, 2024 first ISD Fab 50s coming out. So look out for that.
Breaking news. Jamie's got the ISD Fab 50 for 2024. Big day Thursday. Big day. 6 thoughts. ISD Fab 50.
It's a huge
ISD
week.
Fab 50 and a special pod coming to your pod feeds. All right. So before we get into spring ball and our hot take predictions, let's talk about the women's college basketball team. They advanced to the Sweet 16.
Survive and advance.
That's what they did. Yeah. I think the first round game against Southern Utah was a little bit more conventional, right? They jumped on them early, cruised to a win. And then I guess what day was it? Sunday. They had a tougher matchup. I think tougher everyone around, right? I think Mississippi State shot about less than 30% from the field. Notre Dame was a little bit over 30%. Lauren Ebo and Maddie Westfeld. Did I get that right? Westbeld. Darn it. Westbeld. Huge rebounding day. Right? Yeah, Lauren Ebo, I think she had 18 rebounds, was an NCAA tournament record, Jamie. Did you know that?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Maddie Westbeld had 15, which I believe was third third right there. So that's a huge huge performance from them.
Great defense from them too.
Yeah, absolutely. Defensively, they're like an historically good, historically regarding Notre Dame, and obviously Notre Dame's got a very prolific women's basketball program. Historically good rebounding team, right? So they're plus 10.7 rebounding margin on the year. That's second best in the program history, right? 10.9 was best in 2012 and 2013. So, but on to the NCAA tournament record. Chris Wojcik says for rebounds. So good on them. On to the Sweet 16. This is Niall Ivy's 17th trip to the Sweet 16 as a member of the Notre Dame staff, player in some capacity, right? 17 out of 20, Jamie. She's been
pretty good.
It's pretty good. That's doing a pretty good job. Pretty good, right? If that was the case for Mike Bray, he wouldn't be messing around with South Florida right now. But that's
he would not. No,
that's another topic for another day. So they're going to be taking on Saturday. I believe they'll be taking on Maryland in Greenville, South Carolina. That is going to be, I think it's set at 12:30 Eastern time tip. Did I get that right, Jamie?
I'm not sure about that time. I just know that around that time, I know that it's
I'm pretty sure that's right. Right.
Yeah.
And Maryland, I think, is the 2 seed in the bracket. So that's going to be a tough one. You advance there, and then you'll probably get the 1 seed. You probably get the 1 seed South Carolina, which they are very good, right? And we said before that an Elite 8 appearance would be a successful season for this basketball team.
I think Sweet 16 without Mabry and Miles is incredible, really. If you think
I think like because you're going against the team as a higher seed, and you can make the case that like if you're not going to have Dara Mabry and Olivia Miles, you're not going to end up being a 3 seed, right? Like if you went the whole season, you wouldn't be that.
No.
So they're definitely.
I think they would have killed Mississippi State if they had them. Like that was what they were missing in that game.
Yeah. And Sonia Citron, tough game for her shooting. But what did I say, Jamie? What did I say? Young Kobe Bryant, right? And sometimes Kobe Bryant would have terrible shooting games. You know what he would do, Jamie? Get to the free throw line, 10 of 14 at the line there. So the way to pick up the slack on that. But she does have to shoot better in order for Notre Dame to advance there. But good luck to them. And we'll be following that. And hopefully the ladies can pull it out and move on to the Elite 8. So, all right, Jamie. Hot Take Tuesday, final spring edition. Tomorrow we have spring ball. I'm going to let you lead it off. And I think we're both going to be talking about offense and the receivers at the beginning. Well, actually, I don't even know where you're going to start. But why don't you tell me your first hot take for the spring?
Okay, I'm going to start it out with Jaden Thomas, who I think if you followed along everything I've written this offseason, things we've talked about in here, I'm obviously very high on him and what his role is going to be in the offense. And I think there's a lot of, there's going to be a lot of hype around Caleb Smith and the fact that like, oh, this guy, I mean, already it's a good narrative that he was going to be roommates with Sam Hartman if you went to Wake Forest, right? Like that was the thing. And then it's like, these guys are going to develop this relationship. He can win back shoulder. He can do all these things. And I think, he certainly, I expect Caleb Smith to, be a guy that we talk about in the spring. Yeah. But I think Jaden Thomas is going to have a huge spring. I think he's the guy. He has the work ethic. He obviously has the physical talent that he's just a guy who wants to be great. And I think that just matters so much because, when you get to a level like you're at when you're a receiver for Notre Dame, everybody's talented, right? Yeah. And it's the guys that it seems like a cliche to say this guy wants it more, this guy, whatever, but he truly has that kind of mentality where I think, he's going to keep pushing himself. And I think by the end of spring, people are going to say, is he the best receiver on the team? Is he going to be wide receiver 1 this year? Is he going to be like, what can he do? Can he have 1,000-yard season? That's how people are going to talk about him by the end of the spring. That's my big hot take.
So are you thinking along the lines of like Miles Boykin circa 2018 spring ball, where it was like, you guys talked about it on Power Hour on Monday, where it was like, hey, Miles Boykin's having he's doing Julian Love to the point where it's like, should we be concerned about Julian Love? Like, is that the level that you're thinking about for Jaden Thomas?
I'm thinking maybe just, a smidge below that level, but kind of in that, where the hype is going to continue to grow, where you're going to kind of see that, where all of a sudden it's not going to be enough to say, oh, Jaden Thomas will get his. It's going to be about, oh, we need to find ways to get this guy the ball. And that's where it's going to be. So I think he's going to be a guy when he's matched up against safeties. He's going to win a lot against Notre Dame safeties. He's going to win a lot, right? I think that's the one thing where you're going to really get a good assessment of where Notre Dame is at with the nickel, right? And because of how they have to handle him. And he's a guy, I think, that in one-on-ones, he's going to show he's going to be the guy that at the end of spring because we're not going to get as many views as obviously as we want to based on the spring. They have the one full open practice. I'm going to be there for it. And then we're going to have the spring game too. But I think when they send out these highlight videos or whatever, you're going to be like, man, Jaden Thomas is on this a lot because he's going to be making plays.
He's think of him like almost a cheat code as far as what he's allows Notre Dame to do formation wise, because I when he went out of when Michael Mayer opted out of the bowl game and Jaden Thomas was we talked about his role in that bowl game, and I said he can do a lot of the Mayer stuff, like a lot of the Mayer flexed out things, right? He can be a contested catch guy. He can be a guy who flexes into an H-back role and is a blocker, and that's something that Jaden Thomas has been very good at throughout his career. And all last year, when it wasn't happening for him initially in the passing game, he was a great blocker throughout, right? And so now he gets, like, I wonder how big he is now. Like, I don't need him to get bigger, but I wonder so a lot of guys have slimmed down, right? So Audric Estime being one of those guys, like you look at him in his photos, it's like, man, he's really lost some weight. I wonder if Jaden Thomas has done that or if he's just stayed where he is. If he stayed where he is, I really think that he could be kind of a cheat code of sorts for the offense where you can do multiple things and you can run a lot of things with him in the game. And so you can be in 10, but you're kind of in 11, or you can be in 11, but you're kind of in 12, right? Like you're not really in 12. Like I don't want him to put his hand on the ground, and I don't mean put him down. But if you put him in the slot, but move him close to the line of scrimmage and like a stand up, like a Y, like those, those Iowa tight ends used to do with them just like standing up. I don't mean like that. I mean a little bit more flexed out, but you can put him in that spot where it's like, hey, we're in 11 personnel and you need to have your nickel out here, but we're kind of in 12 and we can run at you.
Yeah.
Right. That's a big thing.
That's the way I see it too, Greg. I see it where if you play nickel against them and you got a small nickel, they're going to run it on you. They're going to run it on you, and they're going to see that, and they're going to say, well, you better play heavier. And if you play heavier, you get a linebacker on them, good night. I think I think about some of those like slot fades, especially like earlier in the year that they didn't hit. I think those are plays that you can hit this year, especially with Hartman. Right. So I think that's something that, I'm looking for. Like, that's what makes, on defense, as a defense, it just gives you nightmares having to prepare for that because, and that's why you almost need a JOK type. Why a defense would need a JOK type or that kind of guy or a Hamilton to play that kind of whatever. That's what you almost need against a guy like a Jaden Thomas. And that's just, I think, is going to be, I mean, if you're looking at what Gerad Parker is going to do in year one, I would be shocked if he's not taking advantage of all the stuff that Jaden Thomas can do for the offense.
Yeah. So like when you say number one receiver, I think people might take it the wrong way. I think like he has a good chance to lead skill position players in snaps because of that versatility. You can always have him out there. Right now, granted, maybe someone catches more passes, maybe someone has more yards or more touchdowns, but he will be a mainstay.
I think all the time. I think that's the thing too, is that I think, and you and I both think that he's going to be used as this kind of like chess piece.
Yeah.
But I think this is my main thing. By the end of spring, I think we'll say, yeah, he's going to be this chess piece, but maybe he will lead the team in receptions, or maybe this guy is going to be the guy who becomes like this big touchdown guy for Notre Dame. And that's where I think the narrative can change with him this spring, because I think it's a lock that they're going to use him in all these ways that we just talked about. But I think, there's a chance that he could be more than that. And that's my big hot take for this spring.
All right, good. Let's transition to mine. I think Buckner and Styles are going to have bounce back springs. I think they're going to be like, they are going to be talked about like, hey, you know who looks really good is Tyler Buckner and Lorenzo Styles. And the reason for that is, I think, so for different kind of reasons. I'll just start with Buckner first. So first spring as a freshman, had just come off of COVID, hadn't played football, right? Like that was like reintroduction to football, period.
Hadn't played since junior year.
Hadn't played since junior year, hadn't been out there. This is a reintroduction to football, right? What can you do? That sort of thing. Not a ton of expectations there. Last year was different. Last year was, hey, we want you to be the quarterback. There's a quarterback competition, but everyone knew we wanted to be Tyler Buckner. And so now he's trying to win a quarterback job when he really didn't have, like, because as a freshman, he was pigeoned into a like a hybrid role. Like I'm gonna be a runner, right? Not a ton of passing, right? Wasn't really developed in that way. It was like, when you come in, we're gonna do a lot of quarterback design stuff. We're gonna do a lot of zone read, that sort of thing, RPO stuff, right? Wasn't really introduced to the offense. So, but then it's like, hey, we want you to be the starter. So it's almost like his development was accelerated on that front, right? This year, I think it's like, hey, I did the freshman thing. I did last year where it was like a quarterback competition. Now it's just about me being a good player, like a good quarterback. If I don't have a great practice, not the hugest deal, because look, Sam Hartman's here, right? Like I don't have to worry about like losing my job. He's not going to lose his backup job to anyone. Like there's no way that's going to happen. I think he has confidence from the bowl game. I think that bowl game probably lifted his spirits a good amount. And I think he knows, like, hey, I can play at this level no matter what. And I think having Sam Hartman around is going to help him. And so I think his mindset's going to be, look, man, I'm just going to go out there and be a playmaker. I'm just going to go out there and make the throws. I don't have to worry about, oh, if I make this mistake, because what are they going to do? They're not going to bench him. It's like, oh, I don't have to worry about getting benched. Like, I'm just going to go out there and try to be a playmaker, because the fact that Sam Hartman's around almost allows Tyler Buckner to play freer. And I think that's what he needs.
Oh, completely agree with that. I completely agree with that.
I think that's what he needs there. Well, let's just start on what do you think about that before I get to Lorenzo Styles?
Yeah, I think, there is something to say about, even though it was like a quarterback competition between him and Pine, everyone and their mother expected that Buckner was going to win that job, right? Going into it. So there was like this expectation going into it. And I'm not saying it, like, expectation could be a good and a bad thing, but yeah. I think, it means though, when there's that, if you have a bad practice, you get a little bit tighter the next day. And it's maybe a little bit harder to bounce back from. And I think one of the reasons that you saw him in the bowl game, in addition, like, people will just say, oh, he spent this time in the booth and he got to like learn all this stuff. Nah, I think the biggest thing was, so Drew wasn't there. He's there as the guy. And it's just like, you know what? They already said they're going to take a quarterback. And it's like you said, he could play a little bit more free. Yeah. And I'm not saying that, like, he certainly had some bad moments in the game, but like Marcus Freeman said during the lead up to the game, he'd been spectacular in practice, and he made some spectacular throws in that game. And I think too, one of the things with him, and he was, almost not good. I mean, he wasn't good with like a clean pocket, which is like rare. And that's like one of the things too, is like, Bruce Feldman just wrote this piece talking about the chaos of, for The Athletic. He wrote this piece about the chaos of the NFL pocket, and like how it's like, elephant stampeding on you and all these like descriptions of like you talk to all these different quarterbacks and what it's like and just the difference between it. And it's like, so a guy like Marcus Mariota was a guy who like, I mean, he was barely touched when he was in I'm aside from when he ran, right? Like, but when he was in the pocket, I mean, he had a lot of clean pockets to work with. And I mean, he was great. He was awesome. And you should be good with a clean pocket. And I think Buckner needs to obviously improve with that. Like Buckner is kind of like shockingly great with like pressure in his face. Like that one throw he made to Jaden Thomas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where he, changed the arm angle. And like, how many times did he get like smacked in the face during that game and still made the throw or made the play? And that's a unique skill to be able to keep your eyes down the field. Not everyone can do that. And it's the downfall of a lot of great quarterbacks. It's the downfall for a lot of quarterbacks who people think are going to be great in the NFL. And I'm not saying that like Buckner, we know for sure he can even be an NFL player yet. But I'm saying him being able to do that, if you are already showing that you can do that, you can master the easier part, right? So, and I just think that thing, what you're saying about just a little bit less pressure, him just kind of going on, and it's like, guess what? Go out and play. I mean, I think that's like, I almost have an expectation that he's going to be by far the best version of himself this spring.
Yeah. And honestly, like for Sam Hartman, like it could be eye-opening for Sam Hartman. Like you could put pressure on him because like when has Sam Hartman had someone like Tyler Buckner behind him? Like when has that ever been the case? Like some guy who it's like, man, this guy, that's a throw right there. Like that's like that's some good stuff, right? And that's sitting behind you, right? Like look, Sam Hartman, I'm sure Sam Hartman's a great quarterback, right? So we're not, he's not going to be like, well, totally intimidated by him or anything. I don't think he's gonna be intimidated. That's not the word. It's just like, man, that guy, he can play. Like that's a good quarterback behind me. The other part too is like this is Tyler Buckner's third spring, and that was kind of the part where I wanted to get to Lorenzo Styles too. This is their third spring, both of these guys, because they were early enrollees in 21, right? So they went through their 21 spring, 22 spring, and now 23 spring, right? And I think so for them, by contrast, like Tobias Merriweather wasn't an early enrollee. His first spring ball doesn't really know what spring ball is all about, right? And these guys do. And I think part of it with Lorenzo Styles as well is Lorenzo Styles, I think, went into last year like, okay, I'm gonna make my ascent. I'm gonna ascend to being like one of the top receivers in college football, period. And I think that might have been a little too much too soon.
Yeah.
Right. Where it's just like you're not getting a ton of opportunities. You're pressing, you want to be something and you don't, it doesn't happen for you early. And then it's like, I'm pressing.
They're not getting anything from the receiver position. And it's like, he's getting most of the targets and they're like, it's gotta be you. And I mean, and when you're dropping the football, then it's like, all of a sudden you're squeezing it tight. Everything is tight.
Yeah. Now you're just like, you're fighting everything that happens. And it's like, look, he's never had the greatest hands, but they're better than that. Like that's like that's not expected, right? Like he's a better receiver than that. And so I think having this being his third spring, where it's like everyone's talking about someone else. It's like, hey, there's a reason that you wanted to get the ball in his hands as a freshman. There's a reason that he put up 8 for 160 or whatever it was in the bowl game, right? Yeah. And there's a reason that he had even more than that on the table if Jack Cohn hadn't overthrown him on that one deep ball. I mean, there was a 200-yard game out there for him. If Jack Cohn had put it on him in the fourth quarter, 200-yard game, like game winner, that sort of thing, right? So, I just think that for him, it's the same kind of thing as Buckner. It's like, you know what? This is my third spring. I can play. Like, let's just go out there and play ball, man. We have all these receivers now. I have this quarterback who knows where to put the ball. I have a quarterback who likes throwing to the slot. The slot receiver at Wake Forest. He had a lot of success there. I think there's gonna be a lot of buzz about him. Like, hey, you know who looks good? Lorenzo Styles. Like I think we're gonna keep hearing that, and that's gonna be a theme. And I don't want it to be like this huge thing, right? Like, oh, that now we start predicting like all these other things, and I think that was the problem last year, was like too much too soon put on him. It's like, look, people are talking about him leaving the program. Like, I don't think that's going to be anything at all. Like, I think he's going to have a great spring. I think he's going to kind of bounce back, and he's going to be in a lot of people's good graces again. And people are going to start talking about him as like, hey, this is why Notre Dame can be actually good, like really good on offense, because we have Lorenzo Styles.
Well, the other thing is too, and David Solomon mentions in the comments here that like he should move to DB. If he struggles, he should move to DB.
Yeah,
and I think that's like a pretty common, like that's what a lot of people say, right? And I don't think he wants to play DB. He doesn't want to play defensive back. He wants to be able to prove that he can play receiver. He's an extremely competitive guy.
Yes,
he's an extremely competitive guy. You're not sprinting 70 yards down the field to make a block for Logan Diggs on something if you're not a guy who loves to compete, right? So that too also was just like an indication to me, like right there, that kind of play right there says like, man, this guy cares. He cares a lot. And I have always been super high on his talent and, his athleticism and his toughness. And I think obviously he's a guy who has shown more after the catch than anybody else on the roster. So I think like this is, I don't know for sure what to expect out of him in the spring. But I do think that's another case where, I think he can be more than Avery Davis. I was a big Avery Davis fan, right? But I just think that he's more talented than Avery was, right? He's like going to be like a stronger, like he's a grittier guy than Avery Davis. And Avery Davis, I'm not saying he's not tough, but I'm just saying like Lorenzo Styles is the kind of guy who would like smack you in the face. Like he's just one of those kind of guys, right? Figuratively, right? And and I just think right now too, that's the other thing. People want to say like, man, Styles is going to be out. Like no one wants to transfer when your stock is down and people are like, a lot of places are going to be like, hey, you want to come here and play DB? Right. And I don't think he wants that. So if he's going to do it at receiver, like he's going to, maybe like it's different after like a year from now, or maybe it's different if he has like a very poor spring, but I don't think he'll have a poor spring. I think he's going to, be able to catch the ball better, regain some confidence. And I just think that, as Rajon said, that was his point, that he thinks that, he can be kind of everything. So should have put and more there, Rajon. That's why that's what you were missing. But I do think, I just don't like to give up on guys when they have that much talent and when you see the want to in them. So I love this take, and I hope it happens.
All right, Jamie, you're up next.
All right, so I'm going to talk about the defense, and I think one of the things that if we were going to talk about the defense last year, I don't think anyone will call it fast. It wasn't a fast defense, right? It wasn't a defense that you would say, certainly when I've like gone and watched the defense in person over the last I don't know, geez, I've been doing this for 8 years now with ISD or whatever, or maybe 9 years. And, seeing the different defenses up front, and you get a kind of you can kind of gauge it against years past and players against years past and stuff too. And I wouldn't say we obviously didn't see a lot, but I wouldn't say it was like oozing with athleticism and oozing with speed, right? I wouldn't say that. And I think part of that is, it's a new defense, right? It's a new defense, third defense in 3 years. So something as Matt always brought up, this is the first time in many years that they've had the same defensive coordinator in a year. So that's going to help. So guys, all of a sudden you understand your role more now. You understand what you're supposed to do. You understand, and you're going to run a lot of base stuff, obviously, in the spring. So guys play faster when that happens. So you're going to play faster. Then the other thing is you got guys like Jalen Sneed and Nolan Ziegler. And I'm not even talking about like a freshman like Jaden Osbury, who I expect to be like an athletic guy, but I'm talking about these guys like a Josh Burnham on the defensive line. So all the way up and down, a Jaden Mickey, Benjamin Morrison, these guys going into just the comfort, how comfortable they're going to be and how much quicker they're going to be and just attack things because there's just less thinking involved. Yeah. And you're going to see these guys, a lot of them with the 1s and 2s on the defense. And you're just going to see like, this is just a faster defense. These guys just look quicker. Right. And I think that's going to stand out from the spring.
Yeah. I mean, they've really got some athletes out there. I mean, so look at the corners like Ben Morrison too, Cam Hart. Both those guys can run. They both have sprinter backgrounds. Jaden Mickey has a sprinter background. I mean, and the safeties too. Like I think like Ramon Henderson. I think Thomas Harper is a faster. He plays fast. That's the thing about Thomas Harper is like I don't think we're going to see that in the spring per se because I think he's got some injury stuff going on that he's got to clean up. But he plays fast and he plays with a lot of urgency. Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like it's not even that piece. It's the urgency piece, right? Where he's not a sit and wait guy, right? And I think a lot of like Houston Griffith famously, like he's kind of a sit and wait guy, right? He's not come flying. There's just not a ton of urgency there. I think Thomas Harper plays with that. I think Ramon Henderson's a fast player, right? And so and Xavier Watts, perfect example of like I don't know what his time 40 is. But man, he's playing urgent. Like he sees it and he's going, and that'll probably lead to some mistakes, but that's fine. I think there's just an urgency aspect to him, and I think that really helps. I think Jalen Sneed is an absolute freak show. Like the strides too. Like he's gonna do some stuff this year where you think to yourself, "Whoa!" Like this is a high pick. Like this is a guy who will test outside of his outside of himself. I mean, he's you can see him being a really good tester. Igubayra is a good athlete. I mean, just like you think about a lot of the guys who like Josh Burnham, another good athlete, where you think of the guys who are coming up who didn't have roles last year, who are going to ascend to roles this year. And especially they're going to get a ton of run in the spring because that's what the spring is for. And I think to your point, like we're going to be hearing a lot, man, this defense can really run. This defense can really run, right? Yeah. And so I think there's a lot of that, and I think that's a good point, right? Just the overall athleticism of the defense is going to be up there. And before we transition to our next one, I wanted to. So we mentioned at the top of the show we're sponsored by ESQ Clothing. I just wanted to tell people a little bit more about that. ESQ is funded by ND alum Ga Wang, who was in the show earlier, who we saw his avatar and he looked really good. ESQ dresses the entire Notre Dame football team and custom sports coach for each game day, as well as all of the coaches, including Marcus Freeman. And his new offensive coordinator hire, Gerad Parker, will be wearing ESQ clothing as well, Jamie. So Ga's in his 10th year. He simply creates the best custom clothing available, seen in the pages of GQ, the NFL draft, celebrity weddings, you name it, right? Wherever you see people wearing flashy clothes, really good looking clothes, quality clothes, you're gonna see Ga Wang stuff. If you got a New Year's resolution to look and dress a little better, go say hi to Ga at 180 North LaSalle Street, or make an appointment at esqclothing.com. And if you mention ISD, Jamie, 10% off your purchase. If you mention ISD,
that's pretty damn good.
I mean, that's good, man. So again, we're excited we're going to be sporting some of that stuff in a little bit, and we're going to show everyone what it's like, and we're going to look 10 times better, Jamie. I'm so excited for that. All right, moving on to our next one. And so we talk a lot about DBs, Jamie. And we always mention Cam Hart. We always mention obviously Ben Morrison and Clarence Lewis, who's been a mainstay in the rotation. And then it's just kind of like, and then we just kind of jump to Christian Gray, who I think is a good player, early enrollee freshman. I think he's a good player. But I think, and we talked about this a little bit on the last show, I just have a thing that Chance Tucker is going to enter the rotation as a corner this year, right? Whether it's so he's a taller guy. He's over 6 foot. Okay. We know he can run. He's got a track background, Jamie. We talked about that last year. He can run. He's got some size. And the thing about him is that we noticed is he always travels with the team. He's always on the travel roster, right? And that's a guy, it's like when you're traveling somebody, I think that that shows the staff. It's like, hey, we think this guy, he's got something, right? We're going to bring him on road trips. And so I do think that he's got a chance to get into the rotation. I think it's a huge spring for him in terms of like, hey, if he can't get into the rotation this spring, it's going to be hard for him to get in the rotation, like kind of at all, right? And I think for him, it's like he's going into his third spring now, or his third year, right? I don't know if it's his third spring because he was a COVID
It's his,
guy.
second.
Yeah, so it's second spring, but it's third season, entering into his third season. And I think that he's got that urgency where it's like, hey, man, I'm fighting for my job. Like, I'm fighting for a spot on this roster. Like, I want to stay here. I want to get my degree from Notre Dame. I want to be a player at Notre Dame. I think he really wants it. I think that he has the physical ability to do it. He just got to go do it. And it was tough, right? And I think a lot of these, the 2020 year with the COVID class, I think it was difficult for a lot of them. I think we've seen a lot of that group kind of struggle a little bit, especially offensive linemen, right? Carmody and Baker. Like, I think that they've struggled a little bit. And I just think that's in with a lot of that class. It's like the COVID year was very strange. It wasn't like the best freshman year to come into from a weight training standpoint, from any of that stuff, right? Quarantined and all those things. I think this is where a player like him can make his mark. You know, he's been on campus. He just went through his first full, like, kind of normal year, and now he can really make his mark on the rotation. I think he's got a chance, Jamie. I think he's going to be a really good player. And I think that he's got the size, he's got the physical ability, and he has the want to do it. So I think he's going to be one. No one talks about him really in terms of being a factor, but I think he's got a chance, Jamie.
So a few things on Tucker, because we had mentioned him before, and yes. I think we had mentioned, we might have talked about him on Power Hour as well. I might have talked about him with Mike, but I think that, and Irish Bronx, who's a longtime ISD subscriber, asked a question about him on the board, and he's like, why is he kind of being brought up? And it's a fair question because he's not a guy who played last year, right? Mm-hmm. And like you said, he traveled, but he didn't play. And one of the things that I mentioned to him in response to that was that one, he's a guy, in the brief instances we've seen him, he's looked by far the best out of the guys that, like, him and Barnes and Riley, the guys that they came in with, right?
Yeah.
So that's just one thing right there. The other thing is, like you said, he can run. Like he's fast. He's not a guy that is going to be overwhelmed with speed by anybody.
Yeah.
The other thing is, he came in. He's one of the guys, much like a Tyler Buckner, who, because of California, he had that weird, like, spring football.
Yeah, it was like 4 games.
Yeah, and the practices are weird, whatever, right? So he didn't really have, like, a senior year, and his first year corner was playing as a junior in high school. So he had never played corner before, right? So he basically had a year and a third or whatever of, like, playing corner before he came to Notre Dame. And then when he came to Notre Dame, it was still, like, a weird year in terms of, like, that initial development and all that. So that was, like, a thing. So he just kind of, he hasn't had the path, especially for a guy like him who didn't have all this experience, of playing the position before. He's the guy who probably needed the most, like, technical development of everyone. Yeah. And now it's like he's always just like playing catch up.
Mhm.
And so I think that's another thing to kind of think about when people just want to give up on kids like this. And, and sometimes whatever, it is like a very much now or never kind of situation for him because of what they have there at the position. But like, you got to remember that, all of those things that are against him and the things that he is able to kind of like, that he has, that he can overcome that. Right. And so I think, I don't know where he's going to be at by the end of spring, but I would not be surprised at all if all of a sudden people are like, I mean, Chance Tucker is like a guy who can play. Like he's a guy who can play, and he's going to be someone that helps Notre Dame. And it's something I also mentioned in response to Irish Bronx too, is that if it would be a very good thing if he can do that, because we already talked about the depth at corner, but then all of a sudden that gives you an option to say, well, maybe we could use one of these corners at safety. If you don't like what you see in the spring from the safety position, right? If all of a sudden Tucker's coming on, you think, hey, this is a guy who's going to play for us. Well, then all of a, if you're not liking what you're seeing from Ramon Henderson or whatever, then all of a sudden that can change the dynamic there. So I think it would be, it's like a weird thing to say, a guy who's like deeper down the depth chart. It would be like a big development if he could do it, but I think it actually would be, because that kind of opens some things up there.
And not just that, but like, because first of all, he's going to get a ton of opportunity this spring because Cam Hart has the shoulder, and because Cam Hart's had the shoulder for basically his entire career at corner, right? So it's like you need someone behind him who it's like, hey, we feel, because look, Cam Hart got hurt and he missed the USC game. It turned into a bad situation, right? It wasn't a good situation for Notre Dame at that point. You need someone behind him who it's like, hey, we can put him in the game and we're good. Like, we're fine, right?
Yeah.
You can't have what happened against USC last year. Like, just wasn't a good situation. And so I think there too, like that's where he has a chance to like get in the rotation. It's like, hey, I'm sitting behind Cam Hart at the field, and because of his shoulder, like Cam Hart needs to, like, how many times last year, Jamie, did I text you? It's like, why is Cam Hart not in the game? And I think it's because they want to manage him. I think they want to manage the shoulder. And so he has an opportunity to get in the rotation and to play, every third series or something like that, where it's like, hey, especially early, because you're playing Navy. Can he forge a role? It's like, I'm going to play in the Navy game. So Cam Hart doesn't have to do that, right? Like he doesn't have to put his shoulder up in a game against Navy where it's like, we have to expose him that way. Right. You're playing some of the softer teams at the beginning of the year, right? Like save Cam Hart from that kind of wear and tear. So then you come up against Ohio State, you come up against USC and Clemson and that sort of thing. Right. So he has a big opportunity to actually like really get on the field, like, not just be a guy who it's like, oh, he could play in theory, like, no, to actually get out there and get on the field. So,
yeah. Well, I think one of the things too is why you look at the end of the year and, obviously you don't have Hart for USC or the bowl game. And you don't have Bracey for that USC game too. And that was huge. It was massive, right? Like, I mean, that's the team you'd least like to, have those guys missing for. So, I think it's, like every position, but I mean, corner too, especially because all of a sudden a tweak hammy can ruin a season, right? It can ruin a season. So, I think it would be a pretty big development if it happens. So,
all right, Jamie, hit us with your last one.
All right. So, I mean, this isn't like a crazy hot take. So I kind of just like slid it in just to, so we could talk about it because it's going to happen, right? Like, there's going to be at least 5 guys that transfer in the offseason or go into the portal, right? That look, and, you never know what's going to happen in terms of, like, I don't know the exact number. I mean, I'm not one of these guys who like keeps track. I'm like, Notre Dame's at 89 now. They got to get to 85. It's like, they're going to get there. They always do. So I don't even know what exactly the number is at right now. If it's like, for the fall of the, everybody that's coming in and stuff too, if it's like 90 or low 90s, or if it's high 80s or whatever. but it's just one of these things where there's so many guys on the roster now that are kind of entering this part of their career where it is going to be like a Tucker, where it's like, it's kind of like, if it doesn't happen now, it might not ever happen. And it's just one of these things where all of a sudden, you're like, I barely got any reps with the twos this spring, and the guys want to get out. And I know so many guys choose Notre Dame to get the degree, and I think that's obviously going to be like a big motivator for a lot of guys to stay. But still, like, I mean, most of the guys are just competitors and want to play and want to have a chance to play and prove something. So I think that, sorry, Dave Solomon, just like the hottest take I've ever seen in my life right there. It just threw me off. I think I had a brain freeze. I do not agree with that hot take, David Solomon, at all. What? Okay. But I mean, you're just going to get to a point where there's going to be guys, and even like young guys that you just think like it happens. There's just roster attrition. And I was already thinking like there's going to be so much movement in the portal in May, because you already see like just randomly some guys enter there. But like, so Georgia right now, for example, they've got, all these guys who are like big time guys trying to replace Stetson Bennett. And somebody's going to end up in the portal, maybe two guys, right? Like that's just how it is. And people always think about the quarterback, but it's just going to just be something where someone's going to be like, I want a chance to play, and I think I can play somewhere else. And that's just, it's going to be it. So I think at least 5. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you get somewhere in the 5 to 10 range if it just happened. And I wouldn't be like overly concerned about it, because it's going to be guys that probably wouldn't help the team in the fall for the most part. And obviously you want to hold on to as many of these guys as possible, but some of these guys, it might be better for them. So it's just something that I think people should prepare for, that there wasn't that big rush. There was a small little push for some of the transfers in the portal for Notre Dame after the season. And I think there's going to be more of a rush in May.
Okay. I think that's a good point. Joey Madigan says, hello from Fredericksburg, Virginia. Go Irish. Thanks for joining the show, Joey. I appreciate that. Hit the like button, hit subscribe. Subscribe to the show, Joey, if you haven't done so already. That's you'll never miss a show. And we're going to be coming back tomorrow. Like we said before, we'll talk about the opening of spring practice. All right. Jamie, I put this one in here. I don't know how much I love it. So one of them was, okay, so I said Tyson Ford becomes a factor. I don't think that, and the reason I don't love it is because it's really based on like nothing. You guys have talked about him. Okay. It's not totally based on nothing. You guys have talked about him. The staff likes him, right? They like his potential. They like what they've seen from him and that sort of thing. I'm thinking of a player who it's like, this was a top 100-ish caliber player overall, right? It's top 200 on the defensive line. I think the defensive line is ripe for someone to come in and just be a guy, right? And I think that Tyson Ford, why not Tyson Ford? I think that he was a redshirt freshman last year. There was a lot of just physical growth that needed to happen there. And so, okay, right. You have a whole season, right? Get physical and that sort of thing. From all I understand, he's got a really good attitude. He's a really hard worker and that sort of thing. Really bought into everything that's going on. And I think for him, beyond Howard Cross and beyond like the Riley Millses and that sort of thing. I mean, Gabe Rubio's played a little bit. And Jason Anye and those guys. But you know what? Tyson Ford. He's going to become a factor. We're going to be hearing about Tyson Ford a lot. It's like, you know who we like? Tyson Ford. He's showing something. He's going to play this year. Tyson Ford's going to play this year. I think that's going to be a thing. And I think that he's going to be like a big buzz. He's going to have that big kind of spring fling vibe to him. Similar to Jaden Thomas last year, Jamie. Not a lot of people, Jaden
No
Thomas.
one was talking about Jaden Thomas
He had like
before
four,
spring last
he
year.
had like 4 for 44, Jamie, in the spring game. And it was like, oh, Jaden Thomas. And it was like, is this real? Is it not real? It turned out to be real.
That one jet sweep.
He had the jet sweep, and he made Ramon Henderson not look very good, right? And it just, but that became a real thing. And I think that Tyson Ford, I think of all the D linemen who, there's a lot of guys we've talked about, right? Like the Jordan Botelho, like that's no hot take, right? Like he's going to get a ton of opportunities. But I think Tyson Ford's going to rise up, and he's going to be a guy that people are talking about, Jamie. What do you think about that? You're the D-line guy. What do you think? I didn't know this about you beforehand. He loves it.
I love it.
Let's go. Tell me why.
I love it. I think, well, one, I love it for a couple of reasons. One, this is his second year of, as someone that I played, man, this was a brutal thing. Just a little short story here. So in high school, I was played two ways, but I was a linebacker on defense, right? But I got recruited to play like defensive end as rush end. So my first year, I'm at Idaho State. It's an FCS school. It was 1AA at the time, right? So I'm there. I arrive on campus. I'm 222 pounds, right? So I'm 222 pounds. I know that I need to gain weight, right? I need to know that I need to get all that kind of stuff, right? So I'm feeling pretty good. I had a great winter workouts, had a great red shirted the first year, really put on weight. I was 236 and I was in great shape, felt awesome, right? I was like, you know what? Before the season, I'm going to be over 240. That's kind of where I want to be.
Yeah.
That's perfect, right? Well, I walk in, it's, our first kind of defensive line meeting before spring ball. And I see they list the depth chart, right? And usually they don't list the depth chart, right? But at that time, they did for whatever reason. And I look at defensive end. And I'm like, I don't see my name. What the hell's going on here, right? Then I look, and I was with the ones at nose tackle. And I was like, WUT, what is going on here? And they're like, you're moving inside. And part of it, they moved it inside. Part of the reason I was with the ones, I did have a good, whatever, they loved my attitude, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And my work ethic and all that. But it was a part of it was a wake-up call to the guy who's supposed to be starting there, right? And obviously I didn't start during that season. I was 230. But I had to put on a crazy amount of weight in that time. And obviously I gained a lot of weight. And because I had to in order to be able to compete. But it was a gradual process and whatever. So I went from linebacker, right? In a year, I went from linebacker to nose tackle. And let me just say, it was an adjustment.
This is like Junior Tuihalamaka, not being a Viper, being a nose a one.
It would be like moving Junior Tuihalamaka, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
And it's just every little movement. So it's an adjustment going from that to end, because it's just there's so much more you have to do with your hands and establishing a punch and all these technical things that you have to learn. There's no freedom, right? There's no freedom once you get on the defensive line. And there's a little bit of freedom on the edge. There's no freedom inside. Right. You gotta eat double teams. You gotta split doubles. You gotta do all these kind of things. And so Tyson Ford, edge guys, sometimes even a stand-up edge. First of all, I hate this. Get these guys in a three-point stance. These guys who are obviously going to play defensive tackle in college, these D-line coaches in high school, get these guys in a three-point stance. I hate that. Whatever. It's a pet peeve of mine. So he's a guy played like that sometimes in high school. And now all of a sudden they're like, I knew he was going to be a three-tech. Most people knew it, but he's like, okay, now you're a three-tech. He's in the spring. And it's a different ball game. You're working on you're just dealing with blocks you never did before. And although he kind of flashed, it's like you can never really get comfortable, because it's like you're always seeing something, or having to react to something, and it's just like your technique isn't good on one play, and all of a sudden you're just getting driven on a double team because it's just like, and you're just haven't seen that. You've had to deal with that kind of physicality, and it's not just the adjustment from going from high school to college; it's the adjustment of going from outside to inside. So, second year inside for Tyson Ford, so he should be, spent the whole year on scout team. Should be much more well adjusted. He's going to be bigger. He's going to be stronger, right? He's still, a guy that I heard that they really, really liked. Last summer, they really liked what they saw, the flashes when they saw from him. So I think I love this because I think I like that. This is the second year in that position. He's going to be more comfortable. I love his talent. Heard a lot of good stuff about his work ethic and all that too. So, I think he's got a chance to play and really push there at 3 Tech. I don't think he's going to be the starter there, but I think rotation, he's going to be like the guy in the 2s, and then all of a sudden you're going to see some stuff from him. We're like, oh, that looked like I could see this guy, pushing later on in the fall. Where all of a sudden it's like, should this guy be playing more? Like I think that's where it's going to get to. So I love this take.
Good. I was on the fence, Jamie. I wasn't sure. I felt super out of pocket because I was like, I just have a feeling. I don't know. I have a feeling, not based on anything. It's one of those things like I don't like bringing up stuff like this because if I have a take like that, I'll run it by Matt, even if I'm not bringing it on the show. It's like, hey Matt, what is Tyson Ford like? Is he in like a walking boot or anything? Like, is anything going on with him that like, oh yeah, he's out for the spring? And it's like, all right, well that's a terrible take then. So I don't know. Hopefully it works out. Jamie, Pops McGee is in the chat, and it says he's not having a bad day. That's the or not having a good day. That's the implication here. Opening a better day than me. Go Irish. You know what, Pops? We're gonna start right now. Right now, your day is gonna turn around. Right this second. All right, we're turning it around. We're gonna make things better. Whatever's going on with you, and I hope it's nothing too serious. But whatever's going on, man, I hope it turns around right now. We'll flip the attitude. Got a couple people in the chat telling them it's gonna get better. So it'll all be good, man. It'll all be good.
Yeah.
We're going to hang in there.
We appreciate you, Pops.
Yeah, we appreciate Pops. Always a part of the show. Jamie, Joe Burrow brought up something a long time ago, and I wanted to make sure I got to it. Do we know anything about the head basketball coach for the men? The search?
I mean, I haven't heard anything. I mean, Christian and Matt would know a lot more about me.
You're going to want to tune it. You're going to want to go to IrishSportsDaily.com for that.
Yes.
Check out the message board. If you're
Christian, especially, too, is a guy who has a lot of good basketball contacts and is someone who I think when he has a kind of an idea of what it'll be like, I think we'll know pretty soon. But, I mean, I don't know. It's a weird thing to say, like, how it went with Bray just really just destroyed them. Like, just really kind of just, and obviously they want to get the best guy possible, but it's like, you got to like, now they're going to have to overpay and get a guy that knows it's like, hey, this is probably going to be till year 3 before you really kind of get it here. Like,
yeah, like the way it ended, and not just the fact that like, look, you had to get it out. And the idea was you want to get it out soon so that you can get a head start on the search, right? Well, other teams are filling roles now, like it seems to me that advantage has kind of gone away a little bit. And
yes.
And the fact that the season then was completely mailed in too. I mean, it really needed to be like, look, man, you're going to leave and that's fine. And we all agree, but like, please coach your butt off so this thing doesn't completely bottom out, because then you lose, like, you lose the recruits. JJ Starling's off to Syracuse, like it just, it made it, the whole situation was just like toxic and bad. It really killed them. It really did. And so there's a lot going on, and it's just, it turned out to be as bad as it could be.
And so. It's almost okay. And obviously you don't want to do Bray dirty, like in terms of just being like, okay, just walk away right now. But the program would have been better off if they just placed like somebody as the interim.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, maybe this guy has a shot, and maybe this guy can maybe keep the class together. Maybe he can convince like you know, the guys everybody who went into the portal, you know, that's different. Just, they didn't want to do it because he was there for 23 years and they wanted to kind of treat him a certain way. But it's like, I mean, you kind of got to be cutthroat in those situations. Yeah. And
the program, unfortunately, the way that he was coaching, the way the team was playing, it didn't lend itself to like this farewell tour. It just
no, it did
you
not.
It was just, I know you want to do it, and I know all that stuff.
Even just like the vibes of just like going to the backer and stuff. It's like, okay, that's like a fun Mike Bray. And I understand, like, there's so many people, and we know like so many people that are just like Mike Bray for life. I just love this guy. How can you not love him because of, you know, what he did and those back-to-back Elite Eights and all that kind of stuff. But just like, you don't get, you might maybe the goodwill points you get, that don't matter when you're hiring the next coach, and they haven't done it yet. And I'm not even a hardcore ND basketball guy, but if I was, I'd be like, this is going pretty terrible. Like, you got to get somebody like yesterday.
Right. And it's like, look, everyone hates Brian Kelly, right? Or not hates, but you know what I'm saying? Like, Brian Kelly doesn't have the
general dislike, I would say.
General dislike, right? Like, he's a negative figure, right?
Yeah.
But like, and he did Notre Dame dirty, but they were 11-1.
Yeah.
You know, like, he didn't. It's not like they were 3-9. It's not like they were 3-6, and then it was like, hey, guess what? I'm out of here, and I'm going to go somewhere else. And it's like, okay, and then you end up 3-9, and it's like, all right, well, this is terrible, right? Like, your recruiting class falls apart. You got players in the portal all over the place. Like, it just, that's what it ended up being. You know, to me, I'm kind of surprised that, like, everyone's just kind of chill about it. Like, you know, oh, Mike Bray, like he went to the backer, and that's cool. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I don't have the affinity that other people do. So, all right, we're going to end it there. We're going to be back tomorrow talking about the first spring practice. Marcus Freeman is going to have a press conference talking about the roster, talking about what we've heard. I think Matt will. Do they get first 5 periods tomorrow?
They get first 5 periods. Marcus Freeman is going to speak after.
Okay, so Matt will be there
at around 10 a.m. He's going to speak.
So we'll listen to Marcus Freeman. Matt will get some stuff from him, or he'll have some stuff on the site, and we'll talk about those things. So you're going to want to check us out tomorrow at same time, 11:30 Eastern, and check us out on our pod feeds as well. Links in the description below. And hey, thanks for a good show, everybody. 11:30 Eastern time, Rajon. 8:30 Pacific. All right, guys. Have a good day, and we'll talk to you tomorrow morning.